I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. Works better, plays better. Today, we're going to be talking about Her Story, which was released in 2015 for Windows OS X. There's an iOS port and an Android port somehow. It just seems very uncomfortable to play on those. Mm-hmm. And it was developed and published independently by Sam Barlow. Sam Barlow is probably at this point, he's probably most well known because of this game, because his credit on larger games is kind of overshadowed by the developer itself. But he did do some writing and worked on Silent Hill Origins and Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which is the Wii U exclusive one.
It's the Wii,
not the Wii U. You're correct.
You always do that.
It's just, I forget the Wii exists sometimes. Because I'm an inverse human being. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this game is not a psychological horror game, but is in fact a desktop simulator FMV puzzle-solving mystery game.
Yeah.
It's not really puzzle-solving. It's one big puzzle, which is why it's a mystery, I guess.
You watch video clips of interviews and try and figure out the story of what happened.
Yeah. I want to mention one thing before we talk about the game itself, which was the amusing trip that I took on Wikipedia before recording this podcast, where when finding some information about this game, one of the things that's listed is that one of the things that made him go independent with this, like he had this idea for this game and he wanted to make it and publishers kept backing out, and a lot of the time they referred to the tone and genre of the game, as he described it, as kitchen sink realism, which is apparently like a subgenre of theater that became popular in like the 1900s. That was basically, the idea is it is realism in that it is from the perspective of regular working class people, and that is accurate of this game. That is actually sort of the tone that it goes for. It's talking about these like things that are bad happening to people from the perspective of working class people. But what I love about this is that the counterpoint, and this is like a phrase that was used in France, it's a French phrase, and just translates in a weird, very straightforward way into English, which is plays in the perspectives of that were being used prior to kitchen sink realism's like time of popularity, are just called well-made plays. Which feels very condescending to all other plays.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So anyway, in this game, you play as someone who's not, as far as I can tell, actually a police officer of any sort.
No, as you find out at the end, it's like a twist ending.
Oh, hey, before that is said, do not listen to this podcast if you haven't played this game. And if you're like, well, I'm not going to play the game anyway, fuck you. Play the game. It's real good.
Yeah, it's short and it's not very expensive.
And having now played it a second time ourselves, it will literally ruin the game if you know anything at all about the plot. So I implore you to turn this off right now if you haven't played it.
All right, so spoilers commence in 3, 2, 1. So anyway, you have at the end of the game, there's kind of a twist ending bit that you're the child of Eve, presumably. Yeah. And you're there to try and figure out like what happened with your mom and like why she did the things that she did, aka murder somebody.
Yes.
So, yeah, I don't think you're a police officer. You might also be, but I don't get the sense that you are.
Yeah, it's not really It doesn't seem like part of it doesn't make any sense as to why that would be like the situation, like why the whole setup would be there. If you were, but then it also is questionable as to why you're allowed to browse a police database if you're not. But we're going to suspend disbelief because that's what we do as good consumers of art.
Right. And so you embody like a character in the game, even though it's in first person, and they remind you of that by flashing like a little thing on the screen that like shows your reflection, like Metroid Prime style. And is, I guess, a bit of a nitpick, but I think it looks god-awful.
Yeah, it's really jarring also because your entire experience is, like, exceedingly realistic. Like, the desktop part of it, like, it doesn't show, like, the monitor borders or, like, a keyboard in the background. It's just the monitor would be displayed. So that can look fake because they are fake. That's not actually Captain Falcon standing there. That is an image on my desktop. And then and all of the clips that you watch are FMV, so it's like a real human being, but then it flashes, like the sirens go by and you see your reflection of this like CG lady. I actually agree with you on this. I think it looks terrible and was kind of a bad decision.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't make the face like an FMV face as well, like a real person, and then just kind of like obscure the details and shadow and stuff.
Right.
I feel like that would have been way better, and also probably would have been cheaper.
Yeah, I have a bad theory that is probably not true.
I was just kind of assuming it was an idea they had late.
That's also possible.
That is completely baseless.
Yeah, and my baseless conjecture is that they did try and do that, but they wanted like the lighting to work correctly, because it's supposed to be like a reflection in a monitor. So they like mapped a photo onto a model so that the lighting would, and it looked terrible, but it would have looked fine in the universe of the game where you see it for less than a split fucking second.
I mean, they wouldn't have even had to have mapped it onto a model. Like, they just show the image.
Right.
I would think, anyway.
I'm imagining, like, the sirens going by, how the light sort of goes across the face.
Yeah, I mean, you can animate that.
Yeah. Wouldn't look supernatural. It does look supernatural, actually, like a ghost.
I feel like you could have achieved a better result that way, but this isn't that interesting.
No. So, the actual gameplay of Her Story, if you want to be generous enough to call it, like, mechanics, like, it's a very straightforward kind of thing. But it's what gives the game its charm. You are tasked with searching this database, and they don't really give you a whole ton of, like, impetus as to why you're doing this. You're just supposed to be, like, intrigued. But you have a search bar, and you can type words into the search bar. And the search bar will then populate the videos based on their clips that are like between 3 and 2 minutes long, very usually on the shorter side. And the thing that you're searching is like a transcription of those clips. And so you find the clips and they're out of order and you can't find like play this sequence or whatever. So you have the option to put tags on them or reconstruct sort of a timeline in that little bottom thing to help with your like memory and like pulling apart the important pieces. That alliteration though. But for the most part, you're just searching and trying to find clues and finding more things to search for. And that kind of drives the experience all the way through.
Yeah, and I think the most clever thing about the design, like so much so that I kind of feel like it is like almost the entire design in and of itself, is that you can only watch the first 5 clips that show up in chronological order for the word that you searched.
Right.
So you can't... That's how they kind of paced out the content, so you can't get too much information at once.
Yeah.
And it's like cleverly arranged, or like scripted, so that really important keywords that you would search early on don't give you like the critical information, even though those words might be located in those clips. You have to like go a lot down this like road of watching clips and finding new words to eventually get there.
Yeah, I think that is there are a lot of things that I like and respect about this game. But one of the things that I'm most impressed by is the way that they've managed to script, cut the clips, and organize everything so that you can find the important terms and like the things that you, as like somebody who's seen 3 episodes of Law and Order, would like think to just punch into a police database. Like the game starts you on the word murder because they want you to know sort of like the tone of things, and they've curated these 5 clips that give you sort of an idea of who you're looking at and what they're doing and all that kind of shit. And from there you can start searching names or places or anything that you hear in those clips. But the game also respects the player enough that if you just like get a wild hair up your ass and search a random word and it turns up something important, it doesn't gate you from that. It just says like, yeah, sure, here's the clip. Like you searched guitar, here's her playing a folk song for 2 minutes. Like it is just like whatever. It works like an actual database. And I think that in addition to the cleverness of it that makes the usual experience interesting, it also makes sort of like the go wild experience like actually fruitful and entertaining, which is impossibly rare.
Yeah. And I feel like it would have been like being the designer, it would be difficult to like make that decision because like I feel like you would just imagine like people typing in something and getting, like you can type in the name of the game and it gives you one of the most important clips, and like a probably decent percentage of people are gonna do that.
Yeah.
But I think you have to just kind of like, as you said, they give you a word to start out on, and you have to trust that people are just gonna kind of go with that. Because it's such a unique setup, and once you do go with that, it kind of leads you along this trail of breadcrumbs. Because, like, especially in the first several clips, there's like a key word that really stands out to you, and you're just gonna keep searching that stuff, and you're just gonna, keep pulling the thread, and it kind of gets you that way, and kind of keeps you from guessing wild stuff. But, obviously some people are gonna do that anyway.
Well, yeah, and depending on the environment you're in when you're playing the game, like, something about this sort of like deduction calls to people where it's like, if I'm playing and I search and I listen to murder clips and I'm like, ooh, okay, oh, the victim's name is Simon. Okay, so I'm going to search Simon. And then I listen to all the Simon clips. I'm like, he hung out at a place called The Rock. Let's check that. They go to The Rock. So now you got like action, you got a location, you got a name, you got all these other names. And part of you is going like, you're just running through you're like churning all the details. So you're going, I need to find this bar. I need to find these people. I need to know why he makes glass shit. And like all of these things. And then I feel like I would be too distracted to be like, let's just search her story.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really good in that way.
It engages you in that way, yeah.
I will also say that I feel like the important clips that you find do need context, though they can definitely give you some fruitful, like, phrases to look for.
Yeah, I vaguely remember the first time experience because it's been a couple years for us. But I do remember it taking quite a while to really stumble upon the, like, core like twist of everything that you're actually watching clips of 2 different women.
Yeah. I think, and this is
who are identical twins. But you shouldn't be listening to this if you don't know that.
Well, to hark back to how knowing how this game plays out, like the reason that you just cannot really play this game again, I feel like losing the context of it being a mystery makes you hone in on things a lot faster, because like there are definitely things that we would search in the first time around that didn't turn up anything or like were vaguely related, but we thought were like the key to the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really like that central idea of there being two people is so key to like the intrigue of this, because it goes over the hump from, we spent like 3 hours on this game the first time we played it, and this most recent time was like under an hour or like a little over an hour, around that mark.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is just like the revelation of that is so huge that it makes you recontextualize everything that you had heard up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start going back, and then you start paying attention to the times and dates, which you just ignored before because it was a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
I see you. I do the same thing. It's part of what makes it so like expertly crafted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's paced really well,
Mm-hmm.
which is especially impressive given how unique the game is and how player-driven it is.
It's paced really well despite being freeform and also not having an ending.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that you cannot say about most, if any, other things.
Yeah, and like I think it's smart. Like I think there are some red herrings, if you want to call them that, early on, like searching for obvious stuff, like trying to guess what the murder weapon is and stuff like that you might think to do when you're trying to form an idea of like what's going on, aren't fruitful.
Right.
Like if you know that he gets his throat slit, so if you search knife, it brings up a clip, but it's like a pointless clip of like, talking about like cutting a cake or something like that.
Right.
So I think there's like really clever like misdirections and things in there as well.
Yeah, there's part of it is like them using sort of like pronouns and common names to really skirt around things, and I think it's really well done. Like, you can get an inkling pretty early on that Hannah, who I believe is introduced as Hannah in one of the first 5 clips, so that you have like something to base everything on.
Yeah.
And she'll say sister occasionally. And so you start thinking like, oh, does she have a sister? Like, what's the sister? What's her importance in this? And then if you do search sister, then you end up finding this clip where she's like, she called me sister on the phone. She's never said that. And that like throws up like a million red flags, which is wild, but that's it really does just like change how you look at it, and you could come up with that immediately, but just sort of don't.
Yeah, and it gives you the whole little backstory about how they were born as twins, but then the midwife stole one of them.
Yeah.
And then they met back up. So that's like its own thing that almost kind of distracts you, and you just kind of like go down that path and think of it as its own thing, and then don't necessarily think about how it relates to the murder case until later.
Yeah. Well, and there's like the setup, like the whole, so outside of the individuals, like the environmental setup for their story is also like laden with things that are just going to make you search for stuff that ends up turning up nonsense. Like, they have a giant dollhouse. We're obsessed with fairy tales, and like, and they kept a joint diary, which combined end up eating up so many weird terms that you could search. Like, Eve wears a blonde wig when she leaves by herself, so people don't recognize her as Hannah, who is like the assumed identity of the two. But if you search for blonde, then you end up with all of these stories about Rapunzel, and it's like, like, you go pretty far out. And then also the dollhouse, like the common household words end up coming up in this like long description of this big dollhouse that they had.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like, it's both evocative and also is a great way of just like digging holes for the player to fall into.
Yeah, and it also, like, that stuff kind of ties in thematically to the whole thing, so it doesn't just feel like pointless,
right.
like misdirection.
So how do you feel about, and I'm saying this potentially revealing this information to you because I only found out about it recently, and I don't know if that means that I am dense or not, but there's a because the game is left vague, there's no conclusive ending and it doesn't play like a cutscene. There's an interpretation out there that it's not actually two people, it is one person with split personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that personally. I don't know how you feel about it.
I feel like that can't be the case because of the tattoo and the bruise thing.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you could fake that, but, like, if you were constantly applying and removing a fake tattoo, like, I feel like people would notice that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, you could fake a bruise as well, but then why does she mess up and touch the wrong side of her face?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting fan theory, but I don't know how much water that holds.
Yeah, the tattoo for me is a big thing as well, because if you look at the tattoo and try and draw a conclusion from it, I feel like it resists any kind of like interpretation of, or like any arguments against it being a real tattoo, because it is a game and because the woman either has a tattoo or does not have a tattoo in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And so either she does have it and they cover it up with makeup, or she doesn't have it and they put a fake tattoo on.
It's a black tattoo.
It looks kind of fake to me.
You couldn't cover that with foundation.
True. And we have enough of it, where they're shooting on like kind of, or they have like the film grain effect on it.
I suppose.
You could hide it, I think, but either way.
But dude, the most sensical way to hide it, if you wanted to, would just be wear long sleeves when you're Hannah. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's too many holes to be poked in that.
Yeah.
And like the point of the tattoo, and they use the tattoo in the game. Like, there's the one where she's playing the guitar. That's Eve who plays the guitar, and she's the one with the tattoo. And like the first couple clips you see her in with the short sleeve shirt on, it's obscured by the guitar, like the way she's turned when she's playing it, or like she's holding a drink. And, you know, it's like blocking the tattoo, so you don't notice it. And I think the way that's executed and kind of revealed to you, like, I don't know, that feels like the actual design purpose of it, and trying to use it to serve that kind of a fan theory kind of feels like forcing connections that aren't there to me.
Yeah. I do kind of agree. I think that it's apparently widely enough believed that it is a thing that is like considered to be a potential ending.
Yeah.
But to me,
I don't want to shit on it too much because I think it's a fun theory. But...
yeah. I don't know. I mean, my whole thing is that like you couldn't really make an argument about the tattoo that made any sense, given that it could equally be a production thing as opposed to a actual in-universe thing.
That it looks like a fake because it has to be on the actress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's that. The actual ending, and I'm just asserting, that this is the real thing.
Quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that there isn't a definitive ending. Like that you can just look up, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I actually agree with that. And what I was leading into was, I think of the things that we haven't covered yet, the thing that stands out the most to me and what makes this game kind of unique is the fact that it doesn't end on its own. Like, you have to declare yourself to be finished with it for the credits to roll.
Mm-hmm. I was going to compare it to Obra Dinn, which also is a game that lets you like walk away once you feel satisfied. But then it does have a real ending, so it's not quite the same thing.
And according to JJ, it just shits on your face if you decide to do that. So.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that it wouldn't work in, you know, lots of games, but it works really well in this one.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's something like over 200 clips or something. Like, there's a lot, and you could spend a really long time trying to find those, like, last, like, 15% of them, you know?
Yeah, there's actually a tracker on the desktop that lets you see like how many of them that you've watched, but because of the way that it's like laid out, you obviously can't. It doesn't lead you into any clues as to like what pieces you're missing.
Yeah, so I think that's clever to realize that and then kind of design the game around it, like that it wouldn't be fun to try and get literally everything.
Well, yeah, because like the way that you test for understanding by the player would be to present them with like a fucking exam, like a multiple choice test Scantron at the end, and be like, "Well, did you know about this part?" And I feel like there's no way of doing that in a satisfying manner. And I also feel like a lot of games, like games that I've played and enjoyed, have done things where the meat of the exposition is left up to interpretation, but then they have like a hokey ending cutscene that kind of like solidifies certain interpretations that maybe aren't as fun and interesting as the one that you were thinking of. Like Home is a great example. The endings are kind of what you play for, but at the same time, like getting an ending that is different than your headcanon feels like a betrayal. Like it's weird.
Yeah.
This skirts the issue entirely and becomes sort of like in a league of its own because of it.
Yeah.
You got any notes?
Yeah, I feel like the actress, who's the only actor in the game, is who plays Hannah and Eve, is great.
Yes.
She is the game, basically. And she gives such a natural performance. Like, it's not a stereotypical, dramatic, like, great, movie style performance, but, like, she feels like a real person. Like, it really feels like real interviews.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that is rare in games to see, like, a genuinely good actress, but at the same time, like, because of the way it's shot, because it's like set in 1994 and like it's like this grainy videotape footage, it honestly doesn't even like, it doesn't jump to you immediately how good this actress is. Like you're watching and you're like, oh, I got the information and shit. Like it feels like it's actual clips, and it's kind of fucked up that it's that good.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't want to like not mention that.
That's a good.
And, like,
yeah.
I think there are like some nice subtle differences between Hannah and Eve that aren't just like the tattoo and the coffee and the
the bruised face.
The obvious like visual cues. Yeah. So yeah, props to that.
I do also want to mention the music in the game. Did you notice it?
Yeah,
it's real subtle. Do you think that it signals something, or do you think that it is just there to break up the silence in the searching parts?
I can't say I was paying that close of attention to it, but so I would guess I would just imagine that it's there to kind of break things up.
That's also what I am sort of landing on. I didn't find anything like clear about it, which makes me think that is the case, but I did notice, like, it would play and I was like, what was that clip we just watched? Like, was that an important clip? Does it signal it with that? And I'm not actually 100% sure. But yeah, it felt a little weird because like the audio is constantly getting interrupted because you keep playing more clips.
Yeah.
And I feel like I almost would have preferred there to just not be ambient music, but I don't know. It serves a purpose. Like if you were to like get a drink or something and walk away, it's not just like
you're taking your time to think of a new word.
Yeah, you don't just hear phone calls and typing.
I think that's about it.
That does sound
all my good notes.
Do we have felon thoughts?
Yeah, this game's great. I think I said this on the Cat Lady episode, on the main podcast, but like the older I get, the more I appreciate like a genuinely unique game or like interface or form of interaction, it's nice to come to a game and not know exactly how it's going to control or how it's going to work. And I mean, this is that. There's nothing else like this. It's super unique. It's really well designed. Great performance. Great, like it's one of the better like makes you feel like a detective games that I've ever played, and I think it hits a difficulty curve I think really nice, where I think like most anybody could figure it out, yeah, if they put the time in, which I don't, I just think it's really impressively designed and well done.
I agree. I feel like if I were to make a pretentious top 10 games of the decade for the 2010s, this would be on it and probably close to the top, simply because of how it's something that is both unique and executed on like incredibly well.
Yeah, and it's accessible.
Yeah,
I think was the word I was trying to get at there, but didn't get it.
Well, it's accessible for a lot of reasons, like low system requirements, doesn't cost a lot of money, pretty easy to get into. Like I don't know a single person who wouldn't be able to guess words.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely a good word to use to describe it. But yeah, it's such a rare thing to see something that is both unique and also really fucking good. Like we talked about Obra Dinn, that definitely strikes this kind of a balance as well, but in a really different way.
Yeah, and a little bit higher barrier to entry.
Yeah, definitely higher on the like mental fortitude part of it.
Yeah,
i.e. I was not that smart. But yeah, this game, it's satisfying without being too like impossibly difficult, and the fact that you can quit whenever, I will hold that accomplishment up forever about how good I think that is.
And it doesn't feel like, in another comparison to Obra Dinn, like you still feel like satisfied and like you reached a conclusion, and it's not like you're leaving it incomplete.
Right. I mean, you could definitely leave slightly too early and feel like you left incomplete. But let's say you just go back into it.
That's your own fault, though.
I think. As long as you give it a fair effort. But yeah, I want to say that's about it. Liked it a lot. Did not like it as much on the replay, not because of the merits of the game, but because it's basically impossible to erase everything about the game from your memory.
Yeah, maybe try it again in 30 years.
Yeah. If I take some like memory pills or something in the far future, when they can just targeted do like the Eternal Sunshine thing, but just for this game. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Sayonara Wild Hearts, because we apparently just love Simogo as a developer.
Check them out.
So join us at that time. And until then, if you want to get a hold of us, all of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find links to our Twitter, our YouTube, our Discord server, where you can check out all of the conversations happening about the games as we talk about them. And you could listen to the Obra Dinn episode that we've mentioned a couple of times in this episode. Baba Is You is another one I would recommend for fans of this. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I feel like it's unclear as to why I have an association, but
unique indie
puzzles.
Game. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Search for
the NOCLIP podcast.
What's that button? Hold on. Let me type YouTube into the the like button. I figured it out. Smash it. Let me search Smash in the police database. Oh, they smashed his skull with a hammer. Oh, and they smashed that like button.
I'm here with Chad Ruthermond. We hear here at the NOCLIP podcast that you like talking into microphones. Could you tell us about that?
Let's take a break.
All right.
After the break.
After the break.
Do we have final thoughts?
Do we have final breaks?
Well, I like talking into microphones.